Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on Data and AI Live, wherever you are in the world. Today, I'm going to be joined by Matt Jacoby, and we'll welcome him in shortly. And we'll be talking about Matt's data and AI transformation leadership journey so far at RaceTrac, and getting some more valuable insights from him as we go through. Just before we bring Matt on, a couple of bits of housekeeping. We are live, so please remember, if anything does go wrong, just bear with us. Things can go wrong when you're live, but we'll endeavour to get back on as quickly as possible. Secondly, Matt and I are going to talk probably for about 30 minutes, and then after that we're going to go into a live Q&A session. So if anyone's got any questions, please ask those in the comments down below, and please don't wait until we go into that Q&A. If they come into your mind at any stage during our conversation, or we've got any questions now, put them in the comments down below as soon as you think of them, because we'll take them in order. When we start the Q&A in 30 minutes, we'll take them in order, and we'll ensure all questions get answered. So please do put them in the comments as soon as they come into your head. Finally, as well, I was keen to understand, we have a bit on talent strategy around data and AI transformation that we're going to talk about at the end, but keen to understand how many of you who are joining us have responsibility around talent strategy or talent acquisition in some form, just so I know how much time to apportion to that piece. So if you have responsibility around talent acquisition, talent strategy, please do put a yes in the comments down below. So thanks again for joining us, and without further ado, I will welcome Matt to the stage. Matt, hello.
Jeremy, how are you?
Yeah, very well indeed, thanks. And you?
Doing good, doing good. Just struggling through the cold here in Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very cold where I am here in London as well. So yeah, I've got the heater on down beside me, and you've got your fleece on by the looks of it, so that's good. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. We're really lucky to have you. For the uninitiated, Matt heads up data analytics and AI at RaceTrac, who are one of, I think by revenue, the top 20 privately owned businesses in the US. And he's going to be talking us through data and AI transformation journey there. So, I mean, just to start off with, though, Matt, let's go right into it, I guess, because time is short. But can you give us an overview of RaceTrac, the business, just to start off?
Yeah, would love to. So we are a fuel and convenience retailer, primarily located in the Southeast, although we are certainly growing up into other parts of the country. So we've recently acquired Gulf Oil. Some of you may know that brand, but we also have our franchise model as well, which is our Raceway business. We also have a wholly owned and operated fuel buying and selling business called Metroplex, as well as several logistics businesses that move our products, both our inside products and our fuel to and from ports and storage and warehouses to really maximize our customer experience. So, as you mentioned, we're one of the largest privately held businesses in the United States. We are, depending on the year, in the top 3 in the state of Georgia. And just to give you a kind of point of reference, if we were on the Fortune list, we'd be hovering right around Fortune 150. So we are really proud of what we've achieved, still being privately held, and really a family-run business that's been around for 90 years.
Yeah, that's great. That's incredible scale, really, for a privately owned business. Really impressive. I mean, outside of that, what was the attraction? I mean, you come from a a really successful background in data analytics and AI leadership across a number of businesses, but what was the attraction for you? Sort of why join RaceTrac?
Yeah, really great question. So all of those privately held and family owned and 90 years of incredible customer success and experience to the side, I think that's point number one, right? It's a really incredible business. And two, I really had no intention on leaving consulting. So that was my career before. So data and analytics at some of the world's largest firms, some of the world's most renowned firms, working with some of the world's largest businesses globally. Um, and there are quite a few things, but first and foremost was the opportunity to drive immediate impact. So we'll probably talk about the first 90 days here shortly, but it's not very often that an organization of this scale and this size and this success has such an opportunity with analytics, AI. Insert your buzzword, right? And it was very clear during the recruiting and interview process that they were all in on this. They wanted a leader that had experience not just in their industry but across the board, that could come in and truly make an impact. And then the corollary to that is the data and the infrastructure that they had already put in place. So I would be very remiss not to shout out to the IT team that we have at RaceTrac that did a absolutely and continues to do an unreal job of getting our data consolidated and streamlined and accurate and available for some of the cool things that we're doing from an analytics and AI standpoint.
Yeah. And let me just pick up on a few of those points there, actually, because I think some of them are really interesting. And a lot of what I hear from data leaders is their frustrations around joining businesses that maybe, and then they discover those businesses perhaps weren't all in on data and AI, and there's not enough top-down leadership, or that the data within that business is actually not in a good enough, or is not managed well enough to produce value. Two things you mentioned there. So for you, if there are any data leaders like that listening, would you have any kind of insights or tips at interview to help you establish, that the business is all in, that the data is managed effectively for you to come in and create value? That those sort of baseline things are there.
Yeah, going off script, aren't we, Jeremy? Yeah, that's a really
We are, but that's your fault, Matt. You
no, totally fair. And those of us that have been through these recruiting processes, we all know how they go, right? We're both trying to learn and we're both trying to sell to each other. And a lot of times things are said, not for nefarious reasons, but they believe that they are better than they might actually be in terms of capability and platform and technology. Um, and I think at a certain point, you just kind of have to trust based on your gut. But yeah, how do you know if you're going into an opportunity that is ripe, that is successful, that that they have put their money where their mouth is? I think it just comes down to really the people and the conversations that you have, and knowing how to ask the right questions. And are they talking about cloud capabilities like Databricks or the others versus old school on-prem type of capabilities. So I think it's up to all of us to kind of sniff that out and figure it out through the questions that you can ask. Unfortunately, I don't have anything overly prescriptive to give you there, but that's how I typically handle it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a two-way street, isn't it? Well, coming back on script, or we don't have a script, obviously, Matt, but you mentioned it a few minutes ago, which was about the first 90 days. So you've joined RaceTrac, huge, one of the biggest privately owned businesses in the US. Tell us about that first 90 days, and what did it look like?
Yeah. So all of the relationship building and things to the side, I think we can talk more tactically and strategically than that, because those are kind of a given, right? But first and foremost, we wanted to position this team as a strategic team, not just a reactive order taking shop that builds reports and dashboards. That is not what analytics at scale and analytics that brings value looks like. So if you just think about the maturity curve, right? There's four main steps in any analytics journey: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. It's that simple. And before, we were heavily skewed towards descriptive, right? And so our goal was to move up that maturity curve. And we did that in a couple of different ways. But I will say that we really focused on aligning with the business partners. So we're an enterprise team. We support every branch of the business. And we worked with them to figure out what they actually needed. And a lot of times those conversations ended with why. right? You want this report, but why? But I want this dashboard to look at store performance, but why? Because it's that why that actually uncovers the real value, right? It's we want this because we believe these stores are overperforming and we want to copy what they're doing in other places, right? That it's a different conversation if you're able to ask why and get to the true value versus just building a report. Um, and so that was really important. And getting individuals in the mindset of the why really means that you have to have partners on our end as well. We need these strategic analytics partners, which was a newly formed role that we started when we kind of realigned the team. And it is their job to obsess over these things. We have them aligned directly to these business units, much like an HR business partner, much like an accounting or a finance business partner would be. Um, but we do align directly with them and obsess over their needs, their pain points. And that really pivots the conversation from reactive to proactive and innovative. That's the goal. A lot of these business leaders, they don't know what they don't know. They suffer from the knowledge paradox. They have no idea what machine learning and AI, and again, apologies for the buzzword, but what you could do with these types of capabilities. And that's our role, right? Is to form that and to build that and to define these analytics roadmaps for all of our business partners that we're starting to march towards. Um, and so that was really the corner of it. And then lastly, I will say identifying the right partners, right? We talk a lot about our people, our customers, our platform, and our partners. Those are really the four pillars of our success and our vision as well. If you don't have the right partners, then there's really no way to really scale it well and to bring in the expertise that you need when you don't have the capacity or you don't have the experience or what have you. So that was really it. It was a strategic shift away from descriptive to more predictive and prescriptive, leveraging our people, analytics partners that are aligned to the business, and picking the right technology partners and service partners as well.
And how easy is it to do it the wrong way? And one of the things you said there was about asking why and not just building a dashboard based on the first question, but it kind of sounds simple in principle, but we both know from experience that's a route that's well traveled. So how do you put in place systems and processes for your team or for the business that move away from that reactive kind of technology first approach, I guess?
Yeah, and this is probably my favorite topic. So if you just look at my background and understand how consultants work, at the end of the day, they're there to drive value and they're there to drive change. And the key to that is the value that comes after that change. And so our team, we have rules of engagement and go through a pretty structured process. But there's two things that stick out to me and how we achieve that. One is everything has value at the core. So when we're any capability, any forecasting, any optimization model, any clustering algorithm, any everyone's favorite term, generative AI use case we think about, we are always qualifying that against the value it will generate. Another way to say that is we're not a hammer looking for a nail. We're not running around throwing chat GPT in everybody's face and saying, hey, here, use this. I think that's actually a very poor way to establish a partnership with the business when you're an analytics leader or an analytics partner. And so we really have value at the core. And then secondarily to that, and this is part of our job as well, is we will also only engage if there's measurable and palpable excitement for what we're going to do. You can have the coolest, greatest, most impactful idea, but if it's not a priority for the executives and teams and businesses that we're supporting, it's just not the right time. And that's not to say throw it away. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? But put it on your backlog as a priority. circle back to it when the time is right, and see if you can't do that later on. But those are really our two tenets, Jeremy, to make sure that we keep value at the core and that we're actually successful via excitement.
Yeah, and that second one's interesting. So even if you viewed it as something that could be a large value creator, if you feel it's going to be too much of a stretch for the business to get on board with, you have to have that discipline to just shelve it for the time being.
You do, right? And back to kind of my statement of it's on us, right? If the value is so obvious to us, but it's not obvious to them, it actually creates this really powerful feedback loop. Maybe we're not thinking about value the right way. Or maybe there are 10 other things that are even higher value on their priority list that we're just not the priority. And that's okay. That's totally okay. And that's going to happen. But you have to recognize what that is and don't continue to beat your head against the wall. I think that's something that we as analytic leaders and data leaders do often is that this thing that you can do is going to be cool and impactful. And oftentimes you can win that battle, but a lot of times you can't. Your business partners are your business partners. And if you can't communicate and they're not getting excited at the things that you're sharing with them, that's okay. Table it and come back to it later.
Yeah, and you mentioned Gen AI, so let's talk about that for a minute. Speaking of buzzwords, but over the last year or so at RaceTrac, then, and yeah, a big, let's say, core, big privately owned business, but as a core economy business, over the last year, what have you found? Have you found much value from Gen AI over that period, or have you found greater value from predictive analytics, or what have you found during that period?
Yeah, now we're getting philosophical, I think, a little bit. Yeah, I'll say it depends. We're all still wrapping our arms around generative AI and what it could be. I will say that there are challenges inherent with certain approaches to generative AI, right? A lot of the models are non-deterministic. A lot of them are very sensitive to input data and prompt engineering and talents that we're all starting to develop. And so we've found the most success actually plugging generative AI into our more prescriptive and predictive models to do what people would do, to be an extra set of eyes. So a great example is demand forecasting, right? Um, and by the way, I think we can all align that generative AI is not even close to replacing really advanced forecasting models and algorithms like Profit and even some simplistic ones. So let's just assume that's true for today. Tomorrow I could be wrong, but
If anyone disagrees with Matt, by the way, put it in the comments.
please. But using generative AI to interpret results very quickly and at scale, and give that contextual subjective insight is actually how we found a lot of success so far with generative AI. And it's basically a plug-in to our existing analytics products is what is the approach we've been taking because we still have a lot to learn. And it's much less risky to do it that way as we're on this journey and as we're on that learning curve.
Yeah, I see. I'm just going to bring up a question we've had in, Matt, because only because it relates to something what we previously spoke about. Normally we do it in the Q&A at the end, but as per our topic a few minutes ago, Stephen, thanks for the question. Stephen has asked, how do you measure the enthusiasm for the project from the business partners?
Yeah. Let's take a balanced scorecard approach. There's the subjective and then there's the objective. I think we all know when you walk away from a meeting if somebody is truly engaged about something or not. And that's the subjective. The objective is we do high level business cases for a lot of the major projects that we work on. And so while I don't think I've even said this too. So my team reports up through the finance department. Our team is led directly by our CFO. So that's certainly unique, and back to one of the reasons why I joined RaceTrac. That is the reason why I took this opportunity. Right, we're not an analytics team buried in IT somewhere in an afterthought. We truly are a transformation, an analytics transformation team, and because of that, we have that finance discipline. And the measurable way is when you talk about that business case, we ask for, I wouldn't call it sign off, but we share it with them. And if their eyes light up and they say, oh my gosh, a 10x ROI, let's go do it. Or if they don't. So those are kind of the two ways, Stephen, that we think about it, right? It's the guttural, the emotive, the subjective, and then it truly is the business case up front that we work on together with them prior to moving forward.
Great, great answer, Matt. Thanks for your question, Stephen. Just as an update for everyone, Matt and I are probably going to talk for about another 10 minutes or so now. Firstly, on kind of where Matt and his team are after a year at RaceTrac, and then we're going to move on and talk about sort of talent strategy and talent acquisition strategies around data and AI transformation as well, and then get on to the Q&A. So yeah, Q&A probably in about 10-15 minutes or so. So please do get your questions in the comments down below. So yeah, thanks for that, Matt, and I guess setting the scene so far. So next, let's focus on, or just give us an overview of where you've got to then in this data and AI transformation, and sort of bring us up to speed. Is it a year in now?
It has been. Time flies. Yeah, I joined in September of 23. So coming up on a year and a couple of months. And you're in a great place where you blink and a year goes by.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can achieve, sometimes you can achieve more in a year than you think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more ignorance, I think. You're not burdened by by things you don't know yet, and so you can be a little bit more ostentatious and a little bit more. Let's just say you can claim ignorance for a little bit longer in those that earlier part of a tenure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we take a lot of pride in the transformation of the team that I alluded to earlier, right? So we truly have changed from this reactive order taking organization to a truly innovative and partnership based approach with every single one of our business units. And so if you count them up, right, between accounting and finance and tax and our Metroplex, RaceTrac, our franchises, our merchandise team, our category teams, there are well over 30 direct relationships and business areas that we are supporting. And that's big, right? Big in scale and big in terms of future impact. And what we've done is we've created these analytics roadmaps for not all of them yet, but most of them. And that gives us our journey to march towards. So truly, right, if you're not going to be reactive, you got to be proactive. And to be proactive, that implies a plan. And so that's been something we've been really focused on. And then flipping the page to the activation and the delivery, we continue to forge an incredibly close relationship with our IT team and our data platform enablers on that team. And it's a second shout out to them. They're the reason I joined, and they're the reason why we're all going to be successful. And it continues to mature in that environment and in that space, and makes our analytics tools and products that much more sophisticated and accurate and all of those things. And our focus is on building out our vision is a single AI platform. So complete integration of all decision planning. So it's sales and operations planning on steroids is how we like to think about it. And
Yep.
We actively are deploying things that are impacting our frontline revenue, things that are impacting our back office productivity, things that are impacting our cost to serve our customers, things that are impacting positively our customer NPS scores. We really are covering all spectrum, the entire spectrum of the P&L, and I won't get into too much of the specifics, but I will say all of those categories, we are projecting not only multiple basis points improvements, but whole percentage points improvements on the size of the business that we were talking about, Jeremy.
Yeah. And a quick one, on that from me, Matt. You shouted out your data platform people, and rightly so, and that's a sort of critical piece of the puzzle. But also from your perspective, you've developed and presumably maintaining relationships with, I think you said 30 different business units. That can't be easy. Is that something that comes naturally to you and your people from consulting background, or is there a systematic way in which you maintain those relationships with so many business units?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of all of the things that you're talking about, but it all comes down to prioritization. And so what we also do in our business alignment, so we meet with them, every one of them, at a minimum quarterly, but we like to do monthly. And at any given time, right, we're not working with all of them at once. That's impossible, unless we had an absolute army, and we don't yet. But it all comes down to the prioritization. What are we working on, and what is the impact, the potential impact of it? And we share that across the teams. So it's not as if we're just working in a bubble. Everyone is directionally aligned with what we're working on and why we're working on it. And so it's not easy. It's a lot of conversations. It can create a lot of overhead. But I personally feel that we've made a lot. We've had a lot of success in just the conversation, right? Some of these things that we talk about can be extremely complicated and complex. And I view the role of our team is primarily to fill that knowledge gap, right? A business has a problem. Here's the 4 or 5 ways we can solve it using data and analytics. And oh, by the way, business partner, have you thought about it this way? So it has to happen in this direct one-on-one relationship type of approach, and I don't think it's something that can work passively um, or ad hoc or asynchronously, right? We don't just send off emails. We work with these people face to face, and that's really the best way we've found to be successful.
Yeah, good stuff. I can see some really good questions coming in the comments. So thanks to everyone who's pops a question down below so far. Keep them coming. We're going to go into Q&A probably in about 5 minutes now. But just to finish off this part of the show, we wanted to talk about talent in data and AI, because I know this is an area that's obviously close to my heart, but it's an area also that Matt has frameworks, I think, that he uses and has been very successful in the past, and he's also got some strong views around where organizations go wrong on talent as well. So I don't know if you want to expand on that, Matt. I don't know if I should maybe set you up here, but yeah, it's start us off, if you like, on your sort of views on talent strategy around data and AI transformation.
Yeah, sure. A hypothesis of mine is that we don't do a good job as analytics and data leaders of really isolating what skill sets actually exist in the talent pool together. And so what I mean by that, and a phrase that we all hear it all the time, is the unicorn, right? I think far too often we are all looking for the unicorn, the person that can talk to the business, the person that can build complex models, and the person that can deploy that model in a pipeline and build dashboards and tools around it, right? That person, those skill sets in a single human just don't exist. They are rare. And so, Jeremy, I know we've talked about the pyramid, and you may have people that can kind of touch on 2 of these 3 types of skill sets, but I really think it boils down into to 3 types of roles and 3 types of people, and that's how we've deployed, and that's how we've gone to market. So if you think about a pyramid at the very top, are
Shall I add my crude pyramid to the stage?
please do. I love it.
Matt? So here we go, everyone. Full disclosure: I created this on GPT about an hour ago, but I think its simplicity is indicative of the topic. So yeah, sorry, Matt. Sorry to interrupt.
No, no worries at all. And at the top are those business strategists. So those are the partners that I was alluding to earlier that can work with the business, that can speak the business language, that understand the ins and outs of why you do analytics, and even can dabble downwards into some of the engineering and data scientist type roles, but they are not data engineers and data scientists. And that's really important because, and they are the tip of the pyramid for a reason. It is these individuals that make your teams be successful. They are the translators. They are the in between that make everything happen. They're the tip of the spear for visually on this chart and strategically for our team. And then you go down, right? And I think we're all familiar with what a data engineer is, and we'll come back to that in a second. Um, but when you go down to the bottom right to the data scientists, and I think this one's actually getting more and more specialized, or at a minimum bifurcated, between statistical data scientists and operational, kind of like operational research optimization PhDs. But those are the heavy horsepower. Those are the forecast modeling at scale. Those are your revenue management, price optimization experts that that know Garobi and do things that, frankly, I can speak to, but it would take me much longer to practically build out than they can. And what I also have found too is that they don't want to be the business strategist. They want to represent their work, and they want to share, and they want to participate, but they don't want to be stuck in a room with a manager or a director talking about pain points and problems. They want requirements, and they want to go, and they want to go tackle something. And most importantly, they want variety of work. Once they solve a problem, they want to move on to the next one. So data scientists are also not the best support and maintenance type of talent on a team like ours. And so let's go back to data engineer. So data engineer, the pipeline builders, DevOps, ML ops, kind of the technical backbone, if you will, of our teams. But we've also seen and had a lot of success with the platform that we have selected that really makes this less technical, shall I say. So our business strategists and even our data scientists are much more able to build out pipelines and process data at scale and spin up and spin down compute based on the platform that we use and that we've selected to. So there's absolutely a need for this skill set, but it does get a little bit more democratized based on the platform that you select and that you use. So to round it out, the talent person that represents all three of these as tens, I don't believe exists. It would be amazing if they did. If we could find them, we probably couldn't afford them. But if you start to break it up into these three chunks, not only does it make your talent and your team building and your recruiting process a little bit easier, I actually think it provides a better service to our business partners and to our team as a whole as well, for morale and really what they want to focus on. So that's how I think about this triangle, and I've seen it work in a lot of really incredible places, and seen it scale. It scales very, very well, by the way, too. To hundreds, if not thousands, of people with this type of approach.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm so glad that you've kind of wanted to talk about this side of things, because let me get rid of this crude diagram now. But for my two pennies worth, it's I mean, I think those unicorns do exist, but they're very rare, and to hire them, you need to have sort of multiple conditions in place within your business. I won't go into exactly what those are now, but 99% of companies don't have the conditions in place, if you like, to hire those people. So breaking your talent down into those buckets, it makes it far more scalable, far less stressful as well, I think, from a hiring perspective. So yeah, really important, I think. Great. Well, we've run over time. I knew we would, so sorry about that, everyone. But let's go into the Q&A now. We've got some questions here. I'm going to bring onto screen shortly. Just bear with me. Anyone else, please do get your questions in down below, because we're probably going to go for maybe another 10-15 minutes now on the Q&A. So please get those questions in the comments. Let me bring this up on screen. The user's hidden, but they've asked, when you're brought in to bring about significant change or stand up a transformation in AI analytics group, how do you think about the decision of whether to centralize or decentralize the AI operations?
Yeah, I think the devil is in the details on this one, and great question, by the way. But generally, when I think about decentralized or centralized at all, it really comes down to skill set and talent. In our world, I don't believe that it depends on if AI is in the solution or if you're just deploying AI. I'm trying to interpret the question here a little bit, but I would say that it depends on the skill set within the team that's using the capability. So if you have distributed analytics teams, if you have distributed data engineering teams, or at least some people call them pods, but like federated teams that are aligned,
Yeah.
I think decentralized can work. But I am a fan of analytics broadly and AI broadly being centralized, because there are so many synergies between all of these capabilities. And we like to talk a lot about decision exhaust. So as you do something, as you make an override, as you add comments to a text field, as you do something, it is likely to have an impact on another part of the business. And the more and more you decentralize, the further and further you get away from being able to do that. So that's just something to consider. It depends on the product. It depends on the skill set of the teams. It depends on what you're actually influencing. But I typically scale towards centralized for those reasons.
Is there something in sort of tech digital native businesses versus non there as well, Max? I guess you tend to see federated models more in tech and digital native businesses.
Yeah, potentially. It all comes down to what is your AI strategy, and right, a lot of times we don't think about AI as needing a strategy. I would actually say, and again, ex-consultant, apologies, but I would say that without an AI strategy, which should talk about this, right? Why do you want centralized versus not? What are the risks? What are the pros? What are the cons? Cost. That's another one too. Generally, when it's centralized, it's much easier to oversee and to manage. Um, FinOps, right? Another buzzword that's floating around these days. It depends on what your strategy is and what you're trying to accomplish, right? So, yeah, great question. Apologies, I don't have anything more prescriptive for you, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for your question, whoever you are. Andrew has asked, do you find that like technical training exposure in the technologies around data and AI raises enthusiasm for transformation projects with the business partners?
Oh my God, yes. So right, people and leaders in particular, they do get excited when you talk about new tech, right? And of course, this follows the Gartner maturity curve probably more than anything does, right? You hear about something new, and then they start to ask questions, and then you go to the trough of disillusionment, and then you eventually come back up, and so you try and keep that trough as low as possible. But it absolutely does, both in terms of innovation, and what I've actually found too is in terms of your talent pool. So I haven't really said that the platform that we're using, but um, there's a logo in my background somewhere if you can see it, and I will say that they've had a really incredible run here recently, and that people want to work if they're not at Fang, if they're not at Facebook, Apple. They want to work with companies that are doing and working with those innovative platforms and technologies. So that also gives you that lever to pull. So it gets executives excited at the beginning. And again, this you still have to prove it and go through the business case and talk about transformation and why. But it also gives you this other lever to talk about in your talent strategy and your recruiting and the people you bring in.
Yeah, great question, Andrew. Thank you for that. Dima asks, Are you seeing greater value in using AI for helping your stakeholders to self-serve, or is the focus on developing deeper predictive prescriptive insights?
Really great question. We're still on our the early stages of opening, and I'm assuming this is generative AI to the masses at RaceTrac. So we are actively planning for a pilot to start releasing that outwards. Right now, the focus is to use that as a wrapper to help with the predictive and prescriptive insights. So I hope that's a generative AI specific response question, and I gave a response, but that's how we're planning around it, and much more to come. I keep hearing in the buzziest of buzzwords, generative AI these days. Who knows what's around the corner? I don't know if you all saw the report this week that OpenAI said that they reached AGI or whatever the term is this week. So we shall all see. But right now we're using it to supplement our predictive and prescriptive insights.
Yeah, thanks, Dima. Just before we finish off with the last couple of questions, I mean, probably a good place to finish actually, Matt, is what does the next 12 months look like for you and your team at RaceTrac? What are you hoping to achieve? And I guess what's on your agenda?
Yeah. Um, So with the success that we've had this year, we're continuing to roll out pilots in all of those areas that I mentioned. And 2025 is a year to scale the capabilities, to scale the team, and ultimately to scale the impact that we're bringing to the business. So it continues to be a focus to build those relationships and to really prove the value that we're bringing. I think a lot of times we do our diligence up front, and we say, hey, we believe this to be true, so let's go and tackle this problem. But what a lot of times we don't do is after the fact going and measuring and making sure we did that. And we hope that we actually handicapped that initial business case and we do far better and above. So that is also a part of 2025, right? Is to validate and to vet and to realize the value that these existing programs have had, and to continue to scale. That's really what it's about.
Sounds good. One more. Dima's asked another question actually, which is a sort of bit of a follow-up, which is sounds like the business units have varying data maturity and analytics need. How do you balance building core data capabilities and foundations versus analytics targeted to a specific business use case?
Yeah. So I think one is cart before the horse, right? I don't think that you can have analytics targeted at use cases without core data capabilities in place. Um, and that's everything from automated quality monitoring, data governance, master data management. Kind of pick your journey on the data maturity side. But those have to exist, right? And to get up that analytics maturity curve, you have to have descriptive, right? There's not a world where you can't have descriptive data and analytics and reporting and dashboards, but then go up to network and route optimization or field service scheduling optimization. You just can't do that. And so you have to have those core data capabilities in place and those mechanisms for monitoring quality, and business use of it. We talk a lot about driving through the rear view mirror, and that's what descriptive analytics is. But it's a lot better to drive through the rear view mirror than it is to not drive at all. So that's generally how I would think about core data versus analytics.
Yeah, no, I agree. Finally, I've got a quick question actually, Matt, if I may, which is going back to what we were saying earlier about the need for organizations to perhaps move away from the idea of hiring unicorns and hire in specific buckets, if you like. How do you manage that from a budgetary perspective? And I ask because in my experience, organizations will typically have an idea, well, they might start with an idea that they've got 2 or 3 unicorns they want to hire, and they'll assign budget to those roles, which is often sort of suboptimal. to get that. So if you're then suggesting, well, actually, instead of 3 people, you might need 7 or 8 people, and the sort of upshot to that is more budgets need to be assigned. How might data and AI leaders handle those conversations with CFOs, for example?
Yeah, I think that's it's a good question, and I'm thinking of my response. I would actually encourage us to try and stay away from the unicorns as our number one option, right? I I like to, if you find one, that's like winning the lottery, right? And they're probably going to be a little bit more expensive anyway. But at least if you start with the idea that you're not going to get a unicorn, but you're going to get a rock star data scientist or a rock star pipeline engineer, ML ops expert, DevOps, or a rock star ex consultant from, one of the big four. Um, at least you know what that range will be, and your confidence in that range will be high. If you start with trying to find a unicorn, first of all, I'm not even sure we know what the ranges of those actually are to have an educated conversation with our CFO. I would much rather plan on X and then go back and say, hey, we found this person that is going to change our game, and then give reasons why, and maybe you can go from 2 to 1, so you're going from a higher budget down to a lower budget anyway. So I think when you do it that way, it's less risky, and you also do diversify your talent a little bit more, right? Instead of having the single dependency through a handful of unicorns, you have a handful plus one of other people that together. And I would argue too that a unicorn is going to be great, but they're still not as good as 2. And when you take that approach, and you find the right people that work with your team culturally and technically and all of that, I think that 1 plus 1 really does equal 3 in that world, instead of a single unicorn. So not only does it de-risk, it diversifies, and I think ultimately you get more success out of the team that you build.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like we could go on for a few hours, Matt, but as ever, time has run out on us. So, look, thank you so much for today. It's really lucky to have your time and your insights, and I hope everyone has enjoyed the session. We wish you every success over the next 12 months at RaceTrac, and I'm sure you continue to be successful. And maybe you can come back on in 12 months' time, and we can do an updated show on an updated show then. But yeah, look, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Matt, and yeah, we will see you on the next one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy, and to everyone that joined. Have a happy holiday season and happy New Year. Hope to see everyone in 2025.
Great stuff. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.